In this problem, it says Jimmy's cedar trunk is in the shape of a rectangular prism and has a volume of 3/4 of a cubic yard. How many cubic blocks with a side of a half yard would Jimmy need to measure the volume of his trunk? So here I have a cubic, I have just a cube over here, and then I have a rectangular prism over here. So you can see what we want to find out is how many of these are going to fit inside. We know that the volume of the rectangular prism is 3/4 of a yard, and we also know that one side of the cube is a half a yard. What we need to know is how many cubes fit inside the rectangular prism. So up here I have our volume formulas. So for the rectangular prism, we know that the volume equals the length times the width times the height, and we know that the volume is 3/4 of a yard. And down here for the cube, we only know one side, which is 1/2. But because it's a cube, we know that all the sides are the same. So we can solve for the cube and figure out what the volume of the cube is. So now we have the volume equals 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. And when we multiply those together, we get 1/8. So now we know that the volume of the cube is 1/8 of a cubic yard. I left the unit off, but it's a cubic yard. The volume is 1/8 of a cubic yard. Okay, so then the next thing is, now that we know the volume of both the cube and the rectangular prism, we can figure out how many cubes should fit inside the rectangular prism. And to do this, we use division. This makes sense because we want to know how many cubes go into the rectangular prism. So we could say that the volume of the rectangular prism divided by the volume of the cubes will give us the answer. So 3/4 divided by 1/8 equals the answer. And we're almost there, but I hope you remember something important about dividing fractions. We multiply by the reciprocal. When we flip the second fraction and multiply, now our problem looks like this. 3/4 times 8/1 equals the answer. Also, remember to multiply fractions. We multiply the numerators across, and then we multiply the denominators across. So then we get this. 3/4 times 8/1 equals 24/4. I hope you could do that in your head. If not, make sure to study your multiplication facts. I recommend looking at your times tables every day. But we're not finished yet. We can reduce this fraction. Remember, to reduce fractions, we need to find common factors. Both the numerator and the denominator are even in this problem, so we know that 2 is a common factor. But if you remember your multiplication facts, you will notice that 4 is a better place to start. So let's reduce this fraction. 24/4 equals 6/1, and anything over 1 is just the number in the numerator. So the answer is 6. So now we know that 6 cubes will fit inside the rectangular prism.